some of our officers got a call to a local residence. When they got down there, they learned that a girl it was in the middle of the night. She had jumped out of a second-story window and run over to the neighbor's house and said that she needed help, needed 911 immediately. So officers get there, and she tells them this really elaborate story about how she'd been held against her will in this home. We had really no history at this location. It was a nice neighborhood, nice home. So the officers start to investigate. It's a long story, but that leads to a warrant service and SWAT team being called out. And I was the commander at the time, so we get there, have a search warrant for the property. We end up serving the search warrant. The suspect's not there. We thought he would have been, but the story ends up being that she had been taken against her will or lured into this particular property. And then when she wanted to go home, they wouldn't let her. Turned out to be a guy who was running a human trafficking scheme. He had been running it all over the country. Yeah. And
was this in this town?
It was here.
Talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
small town is not a small town.
Well, and you don't hear about things like that ever, particularly around here, right?
Yeah. This is one of those towns where for some reason things don't really get out. And it started a big investigation that ended up going federal. Kind of the story was that this girl had been lured to this property and hadn't been allowed to leave after she had gotten there. And so the guy who ended up being the pimp, if you will, he ended up ordering her to go to bed. And he had a girl there, or he had a series, many girls. The rooms were all full of other prostitutes that worked there for him. Some willingly, some not, probably not so much.
Yeah.
And he had one that he called the bottom girl. And apparently that's a term in that world. It's a girl that works for him. It's his number two or his right-hand person. Her job that night was to keep this girl in the house and not let her leave. Well, at one point they all fell asleep and she tried to sneak out. And he ended up going back up there, and instead of punishing the girl that tried to sneak out, he made her sit in a chair, and he took the bottom girl and he beat her with a cord, with a extension cord.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
wow.
And made the other girl watch and said, "Hey, this is what you did."
Jeez, dude.
Yeah, and tells her, "Hey, look, if you let her get away again, it's the same thing's coming," kind of thing.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a really wild deal. But they ended up going back to bed. And then at some point when she thought everything was safe, she jumped out the second story window and ran to the neighbor's house. And that started this entire investigation. And as our investigators looked into it, the suspect was gone. He somehow ended up fleeing. We don't know. Very well could have been that when the initial officers responded before they could get a perimeter set up, he went out a back door. We don't really know how that happened. But the next day, our victim was back in her hometown, which was a neighboring community here, and walked into a gas station, and some of this guy's girls were following her around and ended up attacking her in a gas station and beating her again. And so, that led into our detectives did a whole lot of work here. They ended up working with Dallas PD.
Well, I was going to ask if they partnered up with the community.
Yeah, they ended up partnering up with Dallas, and I don't want to use his name because I don't know what assignment he's in now, but a Dallas PD officer did incredible work tracking this guy down. The whole case ended up going federal, and there's an article. I actually sent an article to Brett that was put out about the federal investigation and doesn't name our community at all. Which was kind of a point of contention with the investigators and stuff. It's like, well, we did all this work and did really a lot of the investigation.
Yeah, man, absolutely insane.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy though that I always think about when I hear things like this is this stuff is not uncommon. This happens all the time. Yeah. People are living through absolute hell. We are so bubbled and protected from it. Guys like Mark, myself, and Brett, you obviously get to look into that world quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I would imagine you've seen some pretty dark stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
What can we do as just civilians to always keep your head on a swivel and to be, proactive and be on the offense, and prevent things?
Yeah. Signs and stuff that
Yeah, in this particular case, there are. In this particular case, it was a weird deal. What we found out is that part of his MO is that he would rent homes in nice communities that had low crime rates.
You would never think about it kind of thing.
That was kind of one of his deals, but it would be neighboring to a big city like Dallas or wherever else. And there was others in the country, and he had rules. And the rules were when you pull in, you raise the garage door, you pull the car in, you shut the garage door.
Yeah.
You're not ever seen. We're not playing loud music. We're not having people parked up and down the street. And so he really worked hard to keep a low profile for everybody living in the house to keep attention off of him.
Yeah.
So in this case, it would have been difficult. But there are times, I mean, there are things that happen that you can watch for and call the police. But a lot of people are hesitant to call the police when they don't know. They don't know what's going on.
Right.
And I don't think it ever hurts to call and say, hey, look, I've got a weird feeling about this. Can you look into it? If the officers don't have
Might
the
not be
authority
anything, but just check it out kind of thing.
Yeah. If the officers don't have the authority to, they can always move along.
Right.
And they'll know what their authority is in those cases.
If a community acted like that and just was always on the offense, and
more vigilant,
and I think we could, especially, make a name of, hey, don't mess with this community because it's tough over there. It's not a place you can go and hide out and get away with this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to be soft in policing, and a lot of people worry about, local law enforcement worried about smaller crimes and that kind of thing. But a lot of times that's how you keep your community safe, is making sure that you don't, you're not being soft. Yeah. That kind of deal. Yeah.
A lot of people really don't even think about that.
Yeah.
They just wait for something to happen, God forbid, then you got to call the police.
Right. So you worked in, as local law enforcement for how long?
21 years and 6 months.
Does that include the SWAT portion?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we had a part-time SWAT team, meaning that everybody on the team had another job. So they were either in patrol or investigations or wherever inside the department. A place like Dallas, the city of Dallas, has a full-time team. So those guys are responding. Every day they report to the SWAT team.
So, okay.
Your suburban communities typically don't have that just because they don't have the resources or really even the need.
So Dallas big communities have a full-time SWAT.
Many of them do, yes. Yeah. Yeah. The city of Dallas does, and that's all they do.
That's all they're doing. They're busting doors down. They're
either training or kicking doors or in some cases they're doing patrol in high-risk neighborhoods and that kind of thing as well. But they're reporting to that assignment on a daily basis. We didn't have that. We when I started police work in like 2003, we really didn't even have a SWAT team at all. And that developed over time. There was a few people that went to training, kind of developed some skills. And then as the department got bigger and we had more incidents and things come up, we started to grow it. And then next thing you know, we ended up buying equipment and it kind of slowly morphed into what it is now. And there's a lot of really good people on that team.
I'll bet.
Yeah. Really highly trained. They work with local organizations and people like Texas Tactical Police Officers Association. That organization has a lot of training out there that you can send your people to. And it's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were a sniper.
I was a trained sniper. Yes. I never deployed as a sniper. So many years ago, part of the interesting thing about SWAT teams is usually your high risk incidents that we're handling in a place like here are pretty small. They're close quartered. So you're going and you're serving a high risk warrant at a house, and there may not be a need to deploy a sniper. So yes, they did send us to that training, and I went to a basic sniper school at Dallas PD. It was I think it was either the year of or the year after that Chris Kyle was killed. And some of the Dallas PD guys knew him and had done some work with him. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty cool because when it was done, his wife actually came and handed us our certificates. And so, so we got a picture of
That's awesome.
Kyle. Yeah. And so that was really, really interesting.
That's really, really cool.
And we developed that skill. But when we came back, mostly what I did was the point man. So when we served a high risk warrant, I'm a little guy, so I'd be the first one through the door. And you'd have a breacher that would break the door, and then we would go through. And we probably ran, in our busier years, only about one operation a month. So we didn't have, and some of that was local stuff, but some of it was doing things for other organizations like the DEA. We had a task force officer that was assigned full time to the DEA. And so they would ask us to use our SWAT team to go serve stuff that they were working because we were connected to those investigations through that task force officer.
Oh, wow. So when people think of like the suburbs, right, they don't think of DEA.
Right. Yeah.
They're not thinking of sex trafficking.
Right. Yeah.
But it's here.
It is. It absolutely is.
In our particular community, have you seen a spike in crime in general, just from certain attractions maybe near the lake that are kind of attracting people from everywhere now?
One of the big things that's changed our community is growing up here, it was a small town.
Right.
Wasn't a whole lot of people here. There wasn't a whole lot of shopping.
Right.
A whole lot of people coming to town from out of town, and that's totally different today. We have a lot of shopping opportunities in town, up and down the interstate. We've got restaurant areas, and so that brings people in from the outside, and those are good things to have. It's great for the tax base, it's great for the economy, but it brings a set of challenges as well, and the police department has to adapt to it. So it's changed fortunately, we still don't have a whole lot of violent crime. We do have some, but from a statistics perspective, it's not super high.
Still pretty small.
Right. A lot of the crime is property crime, people breaking into cars. Well, we've had periods of time where we've had home burglaries, a series of home burglaries, that kind of thing. And that keeps the department pretty busy.
What I love about our community is that the police presence is very high. Like, I love that. I mean, you feel safe.
Yeah.
And don't you guys agree? I mean, you can go so many, yards or miles and you could see one or two police officers, and it's very comforting.
Yeah. Agreed.
And that's strategic as well. It's hard to determine whether or not you've prevented crime. It's how do you?
Yeah, right. How do you quantify that? Right.
Yeah. How much crime you've prevented. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that's believed to be true across the country is that when you have, and that's why used to in policing you would have partners. So you'd have a car that had two police officers.
Yeah, I was wondering why they don't really do that anymore.
Yeah. So they kind of.
I've never thought about that before, but that's interesting.
Right. And from a safety perspective, that's great. But departments kind of got away from that because if you can double the number of cars you got on the road and your visible presence and those types of things. And the theory out there that I think proves to be true is that you can prevent crime by being visible.
Well, it's like, what would you say is the average response time from a call?
Oh gosh.
How many minutes?
In our community, probably, I don't know. If you're talking about an average, probably 7-8 minutes, something like that. And now that's a guess. I don't have that information.
But it's somewhere around in there.
But we
gotta
track some
I
of
can
that.
tell you from firsthand experience when I first moved to town, I was unpacking and I found the panic button to our alarm system buried deep within a case. You know this already, Joe? And I'm like, holy shit, I missed that thing. Where's this thing been for the last couple of years? I'm sitting there pushing it and it's like, well, it doesn't work anyway. Not 2 minutes later, this dude with tattoo sleeves and a flak jacket comes walking up my driveway going, sir, everything
Guns
okay?
out.
And I'm like, yeah, what are you doing here?
Love that.
We got a panic button request several times.
Several times.
Wait a minute. So you found a button in your suitcase?
So when we moved from California, I found the panic button buried with some like clothes or something. It's something you store somewhere in your house. Usually a place you'll remember it.
Okay,
Most likely
gotcha.
forgot where you put it.
It's a remote?
It's a remote. Yeah, it's Simply Safe. Anybody have Simply Safe?
I don't.
Yeah, it's all wireless.
That's cool.
Yeah. So anybody that wants to break into my house, it's all wireless. You just have to go and shut the system down.
We'll get the address in just a minute for you.
Right. Yeah.
Man, I want to talk with you, Joe. I know you are a man of faith. I know that's something that you take very seriously. I've known you for a long time, and I can see the characteristics in you for sure of that. I want to talk to you a little bit about how your faith has been shaped by the work that you do and the things that you've seen. I feel like it would be really easy for somebody who does what you do and have seen what you've seen to really turn their eyes against the idea of God and justice and all this because you've seen, awful things, I'm sure. How has that made your own faith stronger, or how has it shaped it in general?
Yeah, so it's funny you bring that up. That's a big conversation in policing right now because policing is struggling with mental health all over the nation, definitely in our state as well. And it's something where the state has taken notice, departments have taken notice, and everybody's agreed we got to do something about this. And we're too late to the game, really. But yeah, in policing, and the problem is that you see things that aren't normal, right?
Yeah. And you see it a lot too, I feel like, probably, right?
Yeah. On a day-to-day,
more than the average person should.
100%. On a day-to-day basis, you're dealing with people in their worst moments. And that's the majority of what you're doing. When you show up, usually it's in somebody's worst moment. There's exceptions to that, of course, but that starts to take a toll on you over time, and in a career, you're going to see dead children, accidents, drownings, kids getting hit by cars. Right. You're going to see people murdered, tortured, motor vehicle accidents with mangled bodies and all that kind of stuff. And really in a lot of cases with a lot of officers, there's exceptions to this, but some of them aren't bothered by that one incident. and Mark was talking earlier about how it, really it can take a toll on you and you don't even realize it, but those little cuts over time. Yeah. And, in my life, I've been a Christian since I was a kid. I grew up in church, grew up in a church family. But, I've fallen away at times, just like people, all of us do.
Sure.
And of course I'm ashamed about those times and how that's happened. But one thing I will say is that understanding Jesus and what he did for us and that this life, the hopelessness that seems to follow this life sometimes, it doesn't have to be that way if you're a believer. There's places, when my life is over, I know where I'm going, and there's comfort in that and a lot of comfort in it. But in policing, not everybody's a believer, and even the ones that are, there's folks out there that still struggle. Being a believer definitely doesn't make you immune.
Yeah. I mean, when you are seeing things like this day in and day out, it's hard to, I can only imagine it's hard to process.
Man. It's just, it just
seeing that evil every day.
Yeah.
You can almost, I guess, get numb to it, right?
Yeah, it can change. And even for me, that is one thing that impacted me, is that you start to be jaded about people, and about trust. You don't trust anybody, because
I can only imagine that.
Yeah, because again, you see people in their worst moments. And so I think early on in my career, you start to view people as good and bad. Which I don't think life's that simple. I'm older now, and I understand that that's somebody going to jail doesn't make them bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's.
Well, say that one more time. Absolutely. Say that one more time.
Yeah. Just because somebody goes to jail doesn't mean they're bad, at all. Even for some crimes that are pretty serious, people go through things, right?
Yeah,
and they have moments in their life when, for whatever reason, they're struggling, maybe it's a mental health deal. And I think there's a huge connection between mental health and criminality in a lot of cases.
Oh man, 100%.
That's a very, very powerful thing that you said. And also looking at it from like a Christian perspective is, yes, there's times that somebody might do something, make a bad decision, and they got to pay the price, right?
Sure.
But having that understanding of there could have been a trigger that set this off, and they could be going through something, but having that grace and that understanding, because I feel like as humans, especially as Christians, we just need to kind of remember that, you know what I mean? That we are a fallen creature, and every day is a struggle in the flesh. It's easy to get jaded, and you lose trust, and then everybody's either a good or a bad person, but there's good people that make bad decisions sometimes, and you got to pay the price
all the time, right? Probably, right? Yeah, I mean, you get lots of that.
Yeah, and that was really powerful, man. That was, I
agree.
A lot of people don't think of it like that.
Yeah, I think the labels, in that case are important. Like, okay, yes, not a bad person, did something really stupid, did a bad thing, maybe, and then trying to look at it from that perspective of like, okay, like this is somebody who messed up, who did a bad thing, and kind of how like we deal with that or how we rationalize that, I think is tricky for sure.
Right.
So just on like a broader kind of scale, I mean, what do you see as ways to implement things that can assist with not only mental health practices for police officers, but also just like the day-to-day person who is a decent person who goes out and does a stupid thing and gets in trouble for it? How do we combat that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think getting down to the source of the problem is part of it, and I'll start with the policing conversation. The stigma of having to say that I need some help has been a big problem in policing, because police officers are type A. They have strong personalities.
Yeah,
right. They men kind of thing.
Sure, they want to do the job.
They're the ones helping others, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah, and they want to do the job, and they want to do it well, and they want to be viewed as somebody that's capable. And when you have to come forward and say, "Hey, for whatever reason, I'm struggling. I had this thing happen the other day. I saw this child that was dead or whatever, and I'm having a hard time with it. I don't know that I'm in a good mental space to come to work today." That just doesn't happen in policing. We're starting to do better, but reducing that stigma, and I think that goes along in the regular world as well. I think that there tends 100%. To be a stigma, whether it's real or perceived. So I think that's a big part of it. And that's one of the things that we're working on in law enforcement right now. I'm not in policing anymore. I've retired and I'm in a consulting role. But that's one of the big conversations is how do we fix that in law enforcement? How do we reduce that stigma with asking for help and finding resources and having organizations figure out how to provide those resources for their employees and have it be a welcoming thing to come forward and say, "Hey, look, I'm having a hard time and I need to fix this."
Yeah.
And then the organization embracing it and saying, "Yeah, we're going to give you some time off. We're going to get you connected."
That's what I was going to say too. Yeah, have them like jump into it also, and I think just like normalizing that discussion. I think just even having the discussion about it helps, and then after that, it's like normalizing this idea of like, "Hey, I saw some really dark stuff. I need help.
Yeah.
And having everybody kind of like jump into that. And I don't know. I know what you mean though. It's always weird to me how asking for help seems like such a weakness.
Sure.
You know, it's just weird.
Right.
And I mean, I'm guilty of that as well, but I do think that having a discussion about it and I don't know, having this idea of like the brotherhood behind you in a sense, I think that's just, I mean, that's helpful, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what it's got to be.
Do any departments allocate funds for counseling and mental health?
So yes,
that's a really good question.
Yeah. So historically, usually the department, you know, and I'm used to municipal policing, right? So municipal police officers are employees of the city, and so usually there was like an EAP program through their human resources department where they would provide some sort of resource, whether it be fully paid for or usually it was handled through your insurance and there was a copay and that kind of deal. But one of the challenges that policing ran into is a lot of those counselors historically weren't culturally competent. In other words, they didn't understand the police space and what was going on in the police officer's life. They were a counselor.
Sure.
But
you got to be a specific kind though, like to deal with a lot of these issues, right?
Well, you gotta understand PTSD. You gotta understand all the different,
Right. Yeah. There's kind of a unique, you got to understand the PTSD piece. You got to understand the culture as well, because policing is a really unique culture. It really is. It's unlike anything else I've ever come across. And so that was a big deal. And one of the things that our organization struggled with and that we've seen across the state and really across the country is that officers would get frustrated with the EAP system because a couple reasons. One, there's usually a process for getting in touch with those people. Usually a police officer won't reach out until they're really, really in crisis. They're in a bad moment right now.
Yeah.
Usually they avoid it up until that moment.
And then it makes it so much worse, right?
Yes.
By the time they actually get the crisis, it's like, God, I feel the weight of everything now, you know?
And in that moment, it's like, well, now who do I call? Do I call the HR director? Well, I don't want him to know that I got a problem. Do I call, well, there's a number somewhere. Where is it? And then you call and you get some sort of like automated system.
Yeah.
It's like, and you're already so fed up that, you just kind of break, that kind of thing. So we've been law enforcement's been doing a good job about working to fix that problem.
Yeah.
Find readily available resources.
I mean, gosh, man, it seems like police officers should have all the resources for that in the world just thrown at them,
That's what you think, right? And again, I mean, they've tried. It's like that, unfortunately, in a lot of the first responders and armed forces, right? The VA tries.
You hear a lot of frustration.
You hear a lot of frustrations, exactly kind of like what you said.
Sure.
God bless the individuals out there that are donating time and able to try to help these organizations. A lot of these organizations are veteran owned and or retired first responder owned and operated, right? Or is that what you're seeing out there in this space? Is that
some of those are, yeah. So you've got some really good nonprofit organizations that are providing, all types of deals for law enforcement and for military. But you also see a lot of organizations coming forward that are paying for law enforcement to go see counseling. They're seeing that there's a problem. There was a really good organization. I'm sure y'all heard about the Allen shooting that happened in the last couple of years in Allen, Texas. And there was an organization that came forward and saw that, hey, there were some officers that were going to need some help on that. And they provided funding for officers to go see culturally competent counselors, which was great. Yeah.
So important.
That was at the outlet mall, right? Or no?
Right.
Yes.
The outlet mall.
I remember that. I remember that. Goodness.
Really bad deal.
Have you had any instances where you felt like, gosh, I need to talk to a pro about this or had things, and like how would that help shape you?
For some reason in my career, and first of all, the counseling thing is so important. For some reason in my career, I haven't had those types of struggles. I have seen some terrible things. I've responded to a motor vehicle accident with kids. I've responded to the drowning with children. I've seen the murder suicide where the woman was tortured before she was murdered and seen all those things. But for whatever reason, and I think my faith, and again, I want to be careful because there's plenty of people out there that are great men of faith that still need help and struggle.
100%. Yeah.
I definitely don't want to discount that. But for me, my faith has always been such a place of comfort for me. again, like I said earlier, I know where I'm going. I know that there's hope.
Yeah.
And those things don't bring the hopelessness that they can bring. And that's one of the things that I am a little bit concerned about when it comes to the policing conversation, is that historically, especially in Texas or in the Bible Belt in the United States, we've seen departments that have had strong chaplain programs that were mostly Bible based, and although there are still chaplain programs across the country, we're getting away from the God conversation in policing, and that concerns me a lot.
Do you think that that's how recent is this, or how long has that been going on?
I don't know. Over time, even when I started police work,
past 20 years, you think it's been slowly out?
Yeah. Not necessarily for our community, but across the country and across the state, similar to what we saw in schools, and I'm a firm believer that a lot of the problems we're having in schools today are because we
try to take God out.
Yeah. We removed God from it, right?
We cannot act alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you start trying to take God out of the equation, nothing
bad
good comes
things
from
happen.
Yeah. Nothing good comes from that.
Right. So I would love to see, and I think the church at one time in a place where, especially in law enforcement, they may not want to go talk to a counselor, but I think there was a resource through their church where a lot of people would open up in ways that they wouldn't otherwise because of the trust that goes along with that and that kind of deal. So, and there's still some of that going on. I don't want to say that it's void of it, but at the same time, I'm concerned with political correctness and the way that it's swept across the country.
Yeah, that's one thing that I hope we can get past and just stop being a thorn in the side and stop having to battle the political correctness, and because it's such an unnecessary hurdle. Joe, one thing that we were talking about on yesterday's show is that we learned of there could be incidences where somebody might have PTSD. There's different types of PTSD.
Sure.
That they might not even know, but some indicating factors is these triggers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I have these triggers, and I wasn't in law enforcement or anything like that, or haven't seen anything near as what you have. But the way that Byron was explaining it could be, you could be at Home Depot and you could be pushing a buggy and somebody could accidentally bump your buggy and it instantly trigger you. And it's like you just got a quick onset of like aggression. And depending on but that's fight or flight. Depending on how long that may take you to calm down, is it 5 minutes? Is it instant? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 5 minutes?
Right.
Are you thinking about the next day?
Are you thinking about the next day? Or did you get back in your truck and you're still thinking about it like 30 minutes later? Yeah. There's small indicating factors of like, wow. And it gave me relief because I was like, I have these triggers and I just thought I'm just an a-hole, like I'm quick tempered. And so that was very interesting too. So I encourage like people to kind of like take a personal assessment of like, man, do I have if you're at an airport and you hear somebody yelling, is that a trigger?
Right. Yeah.
Do you get,
could it be?
It is for me. Like I'll instantly get angry. Yelling is a trigger for me. And so I wonder if there's, and I mean, just how many people are out there that may have PTSD of some sort and not even know it, but these triggers would be able to tell you, man, maybe I need to go get checked out.
Yeah, I think that's one of the concerns. We talked earlier about good people and bad people, and labels. And I think that it's human nature to put labels on people. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we struggled with in law enforcement is that when a police officer does something bad, there's a lot of outrage.
Yeah. A lot of outrage. You guys got a magnifying glass.
Yeah, big time. And rightly so. I mean, to a certain degree, rightly so, because government should be scrutinized, right? And and we need to have small government. Government doesn't need to interfere in people's life. And kind of the most prominent thing that people see is law enforcement. That's the government that they're looking at. And so I understand there's going to be scrutiny there, and I'm not even against that to a certain degree. But at the same time, you can't remove the human element from the job.
We cannot put other humans on pedestals.
Do it perfectly, right?
Yeah, you can't put people on a pedestal. It's just the same as you can't put a preacher on a pedestal or somebody, because we're humans.
President or
you're gonna get let down, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So keep going with that.
That's one of the questions that's starting to be asked more so now, because used to it would be, once you mess up, like your career's over, and that's still the case in a lot of ways. I mean, police officer gets a DWI and they're done.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, why are they out driving drunk? Why'd they make that decision?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
Exactly.
And again, no excuse there. And I'm not even saying that they shouldn't be terminated, but how can we prevent them from getting to that point where that bad decision?
Man, that's really good. Yeah. There's a lot of cycles that go on in people's lives that need to be broken that you're not even conscious of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like so-and-so's an aggressive dad because his dad was aggressive and his dad was aggressive and that's just how it is. Right.
Yeah.
Or here's a law enforcement officer who day in, day out sees these horrible things and then just goes home and has to be the dad and the protector and the provider. But what outlet does he have for his mental health?
Yeah.
Physically fit.
Right. Sure.
Super strong.
Yeah.
But the mental,
does he feel like he needs to go home and have a couple drinks, like in order to deal with it, and then that in itself becomes its own issue. So it's like, how do you normalize asking for help, like we talked about earlier? I mean, how do you make that a thing? I guess that's like the big question. And I think I think the answer is like it depends on the individual, and it's going to be like a matter of them taking the next steps. What is this? Native American tribes hold dear the concept of 7-generation planning, that impact decisions could be considered out 7 generations into the future, about 150 years. The idea is that our decisions today should consider the potential benefits or harm that would be felt by 7 future generations. No, that's... Start thinking like that, and you're like, well, this is what, we're screwed.
Well, no, this is the idea that what Mark was saying, like your grandfather's an alcoholic, your father's an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
It's like you have a job to do on this earth, perhaps, and that job is maybe to break the cycle of the father's sins.
We just need to
for future generations.
I agree with you. I think the problem is if your dad's an alcoholic and his dad was an alcoholic and you're in this kind of like generation of that, I don't necessarily think a lot of the times that you even look at that as a problem. You just look at that more of, that's just how I am.
Yeah.
That's just how I am. Yeah. That's what I grew up around. Like
it's genetic.
I think you have to get people to think outside of that and say,
I think it's an excuse.
Maybe
I think so too.
It's an excuse. It is an excuse. And I think you have to normalize making that known, having a discussion about that, saying, hey, just because this is what I saw growing up, or this is just because what grandpa did or dad did or mom did or whoever did, you can make a change. And I think there's this lazy kind of element of it. It's just like,
it's being in the flesh, right? So walking in the flesh, I mean, there's so many different temptations and excuses but these cycles that there's cycles in your family, there's cycles in your family, my family, we all have cycles. It could be something where, man, I had a great childhood, but man, I get these, when somebody yells, I just get these triggers and it really sets me off, dude. Mm-hmm. And I want to hit. He said, so-and-so may have a great childhood, but their parent, anytime they got angry, that's what they did. They just yelled. And they threw things. Yeah. But 99% of the time they were cool until they got pissed.
Yeah.
Well, that there triggered something.
That's still a trauma, right?
When you're at the store and somebody bumps into you and it, kind of sets you off and they don't apologize, or maybe they got sideways with you. Well, then now there's a confrontation and cops got to be called because trigger that I deal with. You know what I mean? So
sure.
I guess I would encourage everybody to try to break these cycles. And I like what you said, yeah, Brett, that's an addiction. Oh, it's an inherited disease. It's genetic. Yeah. I feel like that could be an excuse, like you said, just being lazy, because look, we're born as fallen creatures and there's temptations all around us every day.
Yeah.
But when you repent and counter that, no matter how hard it is, that's what you're called to do as a Christian. So, for instance, like I'm at the store, somebody bumps into me, I feel like they wronged me. I could easily turn around and smack them in the face because that might be what I feel.
Well, and it's funny because this is exactly what Jesus was addressing. All of these normal things that are happening. I say normal, but really they are. This is life, right?
Well, human things for sure, right?
Human things, yeah. I mean, people respond to things. They have triggers. They have things that make them angry. And Jesus came along and he was addressing all of those things one by one. Hey, how about turn the other cheek?
Yeah. He addressed the heart, right? He addressed the heart because that's where it all comes from.
It's a spiritual problem.
And he raised the bar.
Sure.
He's like, dude, it's written it's a sin to kill and commit murder, but I say to you, if you get angry and you even think
if you have hate in your heart,
you already committed.
Yeah.
So man, you're right. You're right, Joe. That's the bar's been set.
You know, he's walking around, he's addressing. I mean, look at the woman at the well, you know, and he's talking to her and saying, "Hey, give me some water." And she's like, "What? Wait a minute. Why would I do that?" You know, and he ends up telling her everything. She says later, he told me everything that I ever was, you know, and the fact that she'd been married multiple times and the man she was with now wasn't, maybe there was a cycle there in her history or whatever. I don't know. But, you know, Jesus ended up having that conversation, telling her, "Hey, you know, if you drink from this water, you'll never be thirsty again."
Yeah.
You know, and so he was providing solutions for all these things that we're talking about. You know, it all comes back to, it could be classified as mental health, all of it. Right.
It seems like that's like the root of all of this, right?
Yeah.
Like if we can address mental health, if we can normalize asking for help with things, just do so much better as humanity.
I think,
you know,
for sure,
police or whoever.
I agree. I think that there needs to be more. Look, there's plenty of fitness influencers out there. There's plenty of health coaches out there.
Oh, mental health.
Where are the strong Christian men who are advocating for mental health, who are a band of brothers, who is saying, "Hey, man,
get in the work.
You're not macho, bro. Like, I understand that you did this and this, and then you feel because you are alpha and you're type A, but you need help too." Why then?
You'd be good at that, Mark.
But
yeah.
When you break it down in a simple idea like that, like, why do you go to the gym? To be physically fit in case you were matched in a position where you need to defend your family.
Sure.
If you're not mentally fit, what does it even matter?
Yeah,
exactly.
What does it even matter if you're not mentally fit?
And the best way to do that is to be in God's word.
And I'm speaking to myself, dude. I mean, like, this is something that every day we have a choice to wake up and do.
Yeah.
If we're not mentally healthy, we're no good for our wives.
And the problem too,
kids.
man, is it's so easy to become mentally unhealthy.
It's so easy.
You just like slide into it. Like, I mean, gosh. Yeah. So I just got done with a big move, a very emotional move. And man, talk about some bad mental health, dude. Like, I've been in like the pit of it. And I could feel myself in like the beginning, I could feel myself sliding into it. I could just tell. I could feel it now and everything. And I know that I'm going there. And so it's like really hard to kind of pull yourself out and make sure that you're doing things to combat that. And so it's just really easy to go down that weird road for sure, you know?
And I think we can all relate to that. I know for me, when I put my peace and my comfort in something other than the Lord, that's where it starts. That's where the problem begins. You know, my peace and comfort is in whatever it is, you know, even if it's in my family or my wife.
Sure.
You know, next thing you know, I'm frustrated because she's not meeting some ridiculous expectation I have, you know, or whatever, which again, isn't on her. She's perfect, but is on me. And so, but when I'm putting when I'm putting my peace and comfort in the Lord, though, everything else falls into place. Yeah. You know, so I think that's important too.
Yeah. Agreed.
It is, man. And you've got the enemy, you've got the father of lies that will deceive you and try to deceive you every day.
Sure.
All day.
Yeah.
So on top of being a fallen creature and having temptations and having mental health issues, then you've got the enemy trying to devour and destroy. Mm-hmm. So
you just got to work for it. Like, you have to prioritize it. You have to be intentional about it. I remember thinking when I was younger, I was like, man, why is it so hard to be intentional and to have a relationship with God, right? Why if God is inside us and all this, why can't we just talk with him? And it's just this real easy thing, because it's not. It's like, you have to work for it. And then like the older I've gotten, I've like seen so much anything good in life is it's just hard to achieve. Going to the gym's hard. Yeah. Taking care of your mental health is hard. Doing your job right is hard. Being intentional about anything is hard. And so it's the same exact thing. You have to just wrap your head around that mindset, and it doesn't make it any easier for sure, but it's like that's what you got to do with it. Right. You know, anything you want to be successful at, you got to work at. You just got to work hard for it, man. You got to grind it out. The relationship with God, the job, the marriage, the relationship with kids, everything takes work. And when you say it like that, it sounds extremely overwhelming, I think, to a degree, but it's also encouraging to know that it's like, hey, like, put in the work and you will get results. There's nothing better than going to the gym, working hard, and then 2 weeks later saying, oh, wow, actually I look pretty good now. I'm starting to like see it. And it's the same thing with, spiritual life, mental health, anything. It's just, we just have to normalize the conversations like that. We have to have more of this. I know like talking with you has helped me just with all the stuff I'm going through right now. Just this idea that it's like, dude, just take a quiet time, focus on this, breathe a little bit. Like, just focus. Yeah. It's
when your needs are met, especially living here in America, when your needs are met and there's even more so than that, a surplus, it makes it very easy to get incredibly lazy about everything else.
Yeah,
it does. You're right. You're right. Your mindset's off. Yeah. It's off to begin with. Mm-hmm. And then having to bring it back down is even harder. Yeah. That's it's extremely valid point.
Depression knows it's not a socioeconomic isolate. It's not isolated socioeconomically, it's across every single people group, no matter how much money you got, no matter where you come from, your background. Yeah. And it seems to be, and I don't have statistics on this, but it seems to be more prevalent with people that have everything that they need and
100%.
want.
Yeah. Because you can't get fulfilled in all that material stuff. It's just vanity. There's no fulfillment. You can only get fulfilled with Christ.
Sure.
And I get it, man. It's like, it's easy. Like it's tangible stuff. You can see the money. You can see the nice car. You can see the nice house. It's much harder to put that same type of effort into something that isn't necessarily tangible at the moment, right? It's like, you have to have faith, and that's gotta be a foundation of your mental health. Yeah. Or else it just falls apart, Well,
and it goes against everything the world believes too.
It does.
Talking about worldly logic, and it tells you to go down these paths and these roads to get where you want to be. Right. And you look at God's logic and you look at God's word, it's something that actually works, but you usually have to go down a path of faith where you're taking steps that other people will think you're crazy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
Worth it, but tough.
For sure.
Joe, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
You were you ended your career working in patrol, right? As captain in patrol. But before that, as a commander, you were working in the administrative side where you had to deal with a lot of the politics of the office. Sure. Is there a major discrepancy? Like we see this in the military where the boots on the ground, the grunts, they're on the field, they're giving intel to the top brass. The brass is doing something different, and there's a disconnect between what the top brass wants and what the people on the ground are seeing. What was it like dealing with that? Because everything from politics to decision making plays a factor, from the chief of the police on down to the new guy out of the academy.
Man, that's a great question. That's so true. So I retired as a captain, but prior to that, so when I promoted to lieutenant, that's really where I started to see that the most. So as a lieutenant in our organization and in many organizations across the state, they want you to rotate through the different divisions to get experience, because the idea is that you may want to promote again at some point. You need to be well-rounded and understand how everything works. So when I promoted to lieutenant, I went straight to patrol. I stayed there for about a year and a half, but I'd been in patrol my whole career, in some area of patrol. And after about a year and a half, I went to investigations. And our department was growing. We were, there was some attrition and we were adding positions. And so we kept hiring people. And when you're in investigations, I came in plainclothes every day. I was working with more tenured personnel that had been there for a long time, doing things that patrol was not doing. So on a day-to-day basis, I wasn't necessarily working side by side with patrol officers. So you had young officers that came in after I moved, didn't know me at all. They'd never met me before, never worked in the field with me. And then I was there for about 3 years, and then I moved over to the administrative role he's talking about. And that's where things start to get hard. One of my responsibilities there, I had a lot of responsibilities. I did everything from, supervising our dispatch communications center, which at the time was contracting with 2 neighboring cities. So we did all dispatch communications for all three cities and multiple organizations within those cities. Wow. Yeah. Wow. So then on top of that, we also had recruiting and hiring, internal affairs, which was a really, really difficult position. And again, here I am, this guy in this administrative role, and I don't know. Well, I know, and I see them, and I've met them, but I haven't worked side by side with these officers in the field. And now I'm doing internal investigations. Yeah. So when an allegation comes down the pipe, I'm the guy that's looking into it and trying to figure out, because, you know, from a public transparency perspective, when people make accusations, we need to look into those.
Yep.
Again, we don't need to remove the human element from the job.
Yep.
Police officers mess up. We need to hold them accountable. A lot of times the best way to save an officer's career is by holding them accountable in the moment and making sure that it doesn't turn into a bigger issue. But what I found interesting is that many of those internal investigations, we did a good job of trying not to, when it was clear that they were untrue, trying not to make the officers nervous about that and clearing them. And in some cases, they wouldn't even know that we cleared them of that allegation. But the downfall to that is that the only investigations they heard about were the ones where somebody got in trouble.
Yeah.
So next thing you know, you're the guy who's out getting everybody in trouble, which wasn't true. Statistically, we cleared significantly more people in that role than we ever found to be guilty of any sort of policy violation or anything else. But a lot of the officers either didn't know that, or if they did, they were more focused on the things that were visible, like an officer being disciplined or terminated or what have you. So yeah, that was a difficult disconnect for me.
And also one more question. Texas is now a constitutional carry state.
Yes.
Donald Trump has said that he's going to expand the reciprocity, where if you're licensed in your state, you can go to another state and be afforded those same rights. We've talked about this before, just having coffee, but what's it like as a police officer knowing there are more citizens, law-abiding citizens, and otherwise carrying firearms?
Can I ask real quick too?
Yeah.
So does that mean that you can legally carry a gun on you, or like in a car?
Constitutional carry is open carry and concealed carry. Well, I guess let's let Joe explain.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So that's changed a lot since I started police work. When I started in 2003, surprisingly, Texas was really strict on handgun laws. You could always, like when we were kids, you could carry a shotgun or a rifle, and there were really not a whole lot of regulations associated with that. And people didn't know that. Like technically you could walk down the street with a rifle slung over your shoulder, and there was really no law against that. But when it came to handguns, though, the Texas was pretty strict. Like you really couldn't have you could have a license, but you couldn't carry one unless you either had a license or you were going to and from a gun range. And there was all these different restrictions on that. Over time, since I started my career, that's changed a lot. So people that had a license, that started to relax quite a bit. And then at one point it changed to where you could have one in your car, and then constitutional carry hit. And I forget what year that was, Brett. You might be able to look it up and find it.
Constitutional carry, I believe it was September of 2021.
And so on, constitutional carry is if you have a license, stay in your state.
No license needed.
No license.
If you're a law-abiding
citizen.
citizen.
Of Texas.
So if you're a law-abiding citizen, which means you don't have a charge preventing you from buying a legal gun, you could carry it in your vehicle across state lines
on your person in the state of Texas.
Oh, just in the state of Texas.
In the state of Texas. So constitutional carry allows you to carry the weapon without a license if you so choose to, as long as you're not legally prohibited from owning the weapon.
Well, what would Trump have to do with that?
Well, Trump is heightening. So basically there are what's called reciprocity. So if I have back when concealed carry was a thing, if I had concealed carry license in the state of Texas, California does not accept reciprocity with Texas.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So I'm not able to carry my firearm there. Trump is going to change that if you're legally allowed to carry in your state of Texas, those same rights are going to be afforded to you in any of the U.S. states.
Yeah, which I think should have been done a long time ago, because I think it's silly that it's because, if you have a license to carry in Texas and you're driving on a family road trip to Florida, all those states have different laws that you have to check. Yeah. And you have to, I think, what was it? I don't know. You might need to look this up, but like Louisiana, you have to put it in your trunk or can't be within an arm's reach, something like that.
Yeah, Texas has done a good job about building reciprocity if you have a license with our surrounding states. So as long as you've got a license in Texas, if you're in a state that has reciprocity, you can still carry the weapon, not worry too much about that kind of stuff. But you're right. If you don't have a license, you have to know, okay, what's going on in Louisiana. And there's even still some
Alabama, you got to switch it. You got to move it around, the firearm in your car.
Yeah. I got to ask this though, as a police officer, what are your thoughts on everybody being able to just freely carry around a handgun?
Yeah. So I never had a concern about it. And the important thing to know, and again, there's different opinions throughout policing. So I definitely don't speak for all policing in this case, but there is a bit of a misconception in that not everybody can just carry a gun. You know, if you're legally prohibited from having the gun, you can't carry it. So if you're a convicted felon, and there's a lot of different stuff in there to where if you just can't have one at all. But your normal law-abiding citizen can carry a firearm. And I will say, even in policing, there were some divided views on the constitutional carry issue. And this is where I've got kind of a unique opinion that I think some officers share with me, but some may not. And that is that constitutional carry doesn't really bother me, because as a law enforcement officer, if somebody's carrying a gun openly, I know they have it. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And that's valid.
Like that, like if I know you got it, like that's
right there. It kind of,
okay. You know, you're carrying it on your hip for everybody to see. It's not in your hand. It's in the holster. Mm-hmm. I know you've got it. Like, you're not trying to hide anything at the same time. So from a constitutional perspective, and again, this is just my personal opinion, but our Constitution does allow people to carry firearms. You know, it shall not be infringed, and that's a big deal. So what I like about what Texas did is they looked back and they said, hey, look, if something is a constitutional right, we don't want to infringe on that. And we don't want to have a bunch of laws where a law-abiding citizen can get in trouble. So they created constitutional carry, where you can carry it openly. You don't have to be concealed. You don't have to have a license. The flip side to that, so I support that from a constitutional law perspective. The flip side of that is I don't think it's very smart. So, and this is where some people look at that and go, well, you're kind of contradicting yourself, because you're saying that you're okay with the constitutional carry law.
You know.
But my perspective too is that when I carry a firearm, I don't want anybody to know I'm carrying it.
Well, you can carry. It says you can carry concealed.
No, you can carry concealed as well. Yeah.
Oh, you can.
But, yeah, you absolutely can. Yeah. So that, definitely don't want to confuse that. But what happened? But where the law changed is they said you used to, like years ago when you held a license to carry in the state of Texas, it had to be concealed. It had, that was the law. You have to conceal it. So one of the big controversies when constitutional carry happened was, well, now you can carry it openly, and people like me were like, why is that a problem? Why is everybody freaking out? They're carrying a gun anyway. If they're carrying it openly, I can see it.
I would much rather be able to see it. Right.
The flip side of that is, from a tactical perspective, it makes no sense. So I'm not going to carry openly. I'm going to conceal my firearm, because when somebody wants to do something bad, they're going to take out the first guy the guy they know has it.
I think that's my concern too, is like with all of this discussion about mental health and how we're in such just really fragile places, it does concern me on that end that, you know, Joe Blow, who doesn't have a record, but isn't really fit to be carrying around a loaded weapon, can just drive around with one, you know?
You get a driver's license, you drive every day, if not weekly, which is technically practicing the craft, right? How many people carry a gun and never shoot it, never dry fire it, never break it apart, put it back together.
100%.
Don't know how it works.
100%. And all of a sudden they can have this on them. Like that to me is alarming. Maybe it's not an issue at all. I don't know, but it does seem kind of weird.
So I agree. I mean, the mental health conversation is definitely concerning with firearms. And again, this is where I'm going to get into some deep personal views about this issue. But the problem is that we're all. So the question is, if we can't carry a gun constitutionally, and if regular law-abiding citizens can't carry a firearm, who can?
Yeah.
Well, the government. Well, who's the government? Well, it's people that have mental health issues and problems.
Yeah.
So
100%.
The whole idea behind the Constitution was for the people. The people are the government. The people are supposed to hold people in power accountable.
Yeah.
Right. And so this idea that we've got mental health problems, so we should limit who can carry the guns. Well, yeah, but humans with mental health problems are still carrying the gun.
Sure.
So that becomes a problem as well.
Mental health problem. Yeah.
It's valid, man.
You know, and again, we could go days about that conversation but, you know, I personally think Texas is getting it right. You know, I think that, you know, they understand that there's going to be bad actors out there, and you're never going to get rid of all the guns anyway. So if you have somebody in a criminal state that's out hurting people, you may have other people that are willing to come to their rescue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, with that, I have a firearm, I have a handgun. I want to carry it. I will carry it, but God forbid I ever have to use it. And then it's the mental torture that comes after that with being convicted
Huge responsibility. Yeah.
And then having to deal with a case for a year, 2 years on, was it self-defense or was it murder?
Yeah.
I mean, are you seeing from a law enforcement point of view? Because I've read in Texas Magazine, like years ago, that there was a case where it was a clear self-defense, but it was a 2-year ongoing trial of, was it murder? Was it clear self-defense? And then the stress that this person has to carry for 2 years because he defended himself legally, but the state or the state prosecutors or whoever it is trying to put a case on him.
Sure.
So have you seen things like that? And I mean, is it a right to be cautious and hesitant? I mean, because why is there a side that just wants to convict innocent people with a self-defense case?
Yeah.
Why do they want to hit you with a murder charge?
It's a great question. And I don't know that I'm an expert in this area, but but that is true. So even in law enforcement, if you use deadly force against somebody, you're going to be put before a grand jury. You're not necessarily going to be charged, but a grand jury is going to look at it and decide whether or not you're indicted or no billed and whether they move forward with a trial and that kind of deal. And that can be pretty nerve-wracking. But this goes back, and again, I don't want it to sound like I contradict myself, because I do believe in the constitutional freedom and the constitutional right to carry a gun. But then again, there is still common sense things that you need to think about. And one of the things that I tell people all the time is, if you want to do one, you've got a right to. And I even support that right. It's still smart to go ahead and go through the class and get the license. You may not need it, but when you go get the license, they're teaching you Chapter 9 of the Penal Code. They're teaching you when you can legally use self-defense. They're teaching you what that looks like. And then at the same time, to remember that it's a huge responsibility. I mean, you don't ever want to take somebody's life,
Oh my God.
Just don't. No. Like, that's just not. And so it is a difficult thing to consider that you could lawfully use force and to save your own life or save somebody else and have to be put through the legal system. But I actually think that's a good thing, because it still needs to be an extremely important decision. It needs to be, it's not something to take lightly. It's just unfortunate that there's individuals out there that want to see innocent people catch a charge, or they want to see a police officer catch a charge. That's not good. But, again, we live in a world of humans. Yeah. Human element on both sides of the aisle. Speaking of, like, taking it a step further, like, as a law enforcement officer, how are you guys now? Like, God bless y'all, out there risking your lives, and your family is risking and sacrificing because of their loved one is out there on the front lines. And then you've got the media's propaganda of, oh, police officers are bad. They've got too much authority, defund the police. Like, and does that make you scared to do your job? So on top of the daily stress that you have, now you're even hesitant because I don't want to draw my gun, or I don't want to have to shoot this person because I'm going to be on the news and it's going to be how does the departments react over the past 10 years of this silliness? Oh man. Yeah. That's a really complicated question. Yeah. So for me, again, and this goes back to being a believer, that gave me a lot of peace, and when I was focused on that properly, that can help you understand that, hey, look, you just got to have faith and go out and do what you know is right. And, and that type of deal. But at the same time, yes, there are officers that are concerned or have been concerned, and things are getting better now. I think that we're starting to see a swing back in the other direction. I mean, a lot of those defund the police movements, there's parts of the nation, and Brett may be able to find some information about this, but there's parts of the nation where that did not go well. It was law enforcement. Silly. Yeah. The criminals took over, and now they're all looking at it going, oh my God. Those states won't admit it, or those leaders that did that won't admit it. But yeah, you can some of their replacements are doing. Yeah, you could easily pull that up, Brett. Gosh, yeah. So that's encouraging, but at the time it was concerning. Sure, yeah. Fortunately, in a place like where I policed, we had a lot of support, a lot of community support, even through those moments. Yeah. So that was huge. So that it was probably easier for me in that regard. But yeah, there's a lot of officers across the country. But those individuals that are in those big cities where it is, left wing, and it's like, well, man, I couldn't imagine, dude. Right. Being an LAPD officer. Yeah. Yeah. Or Chicago. Up in the Northwest. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dude, Chicago, like New York, LA. It's just sad, but yeah. Brett, did you find that?
Sorry.
Yeah, I got this from John Thune, so you got to take it with it, with what it is, and it's partisan basis. But crime rates have surged since defund the police. This is 2021, by the way. Became a rallying cry. It's no coincidence that cities have slashed their budgets, police budgets, seen an increase in violence. At the end of May, Portland, Oregon was on track to exceed 1,000 shootings for this year. In the first 14 weeks of 2021, New York City shootings were up 81%. Oakland, California, carjackings up 88%. Unfortunately, these are just a few examples.
Well, when you have vigilant communities, like my wife loves seeing guys open carry and gals open carry.
Oh yeah.
I remember when it first happened in our area, dude, we were at Saltgrass sitting outside on the patio eating, and there was a gentleman that had open carry, and we're just like, yeah, Texas, this is awesome. Like, try us. It's like, I'm sure for police officers, you're like, you just want to make sure that if they're going to be vigilant and help, they're doing it properly. It's not overstepping, but that's exactly I would rather, I would rather have a community where you're open carry and everybody's like on the same page and we're on the offense,
Well, you remember the when BLM and Antifa were protesting relentlessly in all the major cities, and they did the one in Austin. And I can't remember if it was Antifa or BLM, but the guy walks up to a car wielding an AK-47, and the guy driving the car during one of these protests where they blocked the street, the guy driving the car happened to be a U.S. Army vet, and he drew his gun and shot the guy dead.
Oh, wow.
And he just got acquitted.
Just got acquitted?
Yeah, this was like 2021, and this has been hanging over him.
That's the...
But, that's the drawback. Tough. But you notice... they may have changed their tactics because they didn't hold very many rallies after Trump got elected.
Man, God bless that guy. And yeah,
but it's you can't walk up to somebody's car with an AK-47 and expect them to
expect to get away with it.
You can't
100%.
You can't walk around intimidating people.
Yeah,
and it's like that veteran on the New York subway that recently
Eddie Penny
got acquitted.
Yeah,
because he's on a subway and there's this dude robbing and beating on an old lady.
He's threatening. He's threatening everybody. Yeah. I don't know that he beat the woman, but I
didn't hear about this.
Yeah, Jordan Neely. He was several prior arrests, life in the system, on drugs, mentally unstable. He was threatening people, saying he was going to kill them. Eddie Penny is a former Marine. Daniel Penny. Sorry, I don't know who Eddie Penny is. Eddie Money, I was thinking the same.
Oh, wait, did this happen a few years ago?
Yeah.
Okay,
but he just got cleared.
He wrestled him to the ground, put him in a chokehold. The guy ended up dying.
This,
yeah. And they tried to charge him with murder in New York City. And it's like,
man.
You got all the people on the subway saying he saved their lives, or their lives felt threatened. And when he neutralized it, no longer did it feel threatened.
Mental health and political divide are the two main things.
Yeah.
That's what's got to be addressed.
100%,
and if you can find a way to address that in a healthy way where both sides of the aisle politically are getting what they feel they need, there's got to be compromise. There's just got to be.
Yeah.
And if you can adjust mental health, and if you can make people take that seriously, and if you can give them the resources they need to get help, you can solve a lot of this, man.
I think a big problem in politics is brinkmanship. This idea of both sides coming intentionally so far in one direction that they don't really even believe in, but they know that they've got to, come out and meet in the middle somewhere. So they start way over on the right, way over on the left. And it's all brinkmanship. It's all big show to get where they want to be, eventually. And
it's a game.
It's a game.
It's a game that unfortunately wraps up all of us in it too,
Yeah.
We all suffer because of the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's true. Brinkmanship, the art or practice of pushing a dangerous policy to the limits of safety before stopping, especially in politics. Boom.
There you go.
That's it.
It's a problem.
That's a nice little thing.
Everybody's got their bombs in this picture.
Shooting arrows at it. Yeah, I mean, man. Well, Joe, thank you for being on, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me. Yeah.
Good insight for sure, man.
Thank you.
Real quick before we wrap, though, you have mentioned how much the Book of John has helped you and has helped you in your walk of faith. Let's. Do you mind if we unpack some of this real quick?
Sure.
Just what has stood out to you and helped you in your walk and in life and in your professional career?
Man, what I love about the Book of John is that if you have somebody that is just now coming to faith, or somebody that's interested in faith, or maybe is willing to listen, but they don't believe or whatever it is, it's a great place to start. It gives some some amazing basic information about belief and about Christianity and about what it's all about. But at the same time, if you're somebody that has been a Christian for years and has a great view or a great knowledge of the Bible, you can take deep dives that'll take you down rabbit trails you can do entire Bible studies on short little passages in the book of John.
Is there one that stood out to you? Sure.
Oh gosh. I mean, even just talking to somebody that's a newer believer or somebody that maybe isn't a believer and wants to know what it's all about. Mm-hmm. I mean, just even in the first few verses, you got John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. And so you start listening to this and you're able to explain to somebody that, hey, what they're talking about here is Jesus. And it's taking us back to Genesis 1. Mm-hmm. And it's going, hey, in the beginning, well, what was going on in the beginning? Well, Genesis 1 was going on in the beginning. And Jesus was already there. And God created the world through his words. He used his words saying, let there be light, and created the world through that. Well, that very word, the book of John tells us, was God the Son, was Jesus, who later became flesh. And so you start going through those basics of Christianity, and it's really, really deep and insightful. And then once you get a good basis, it doesn't matter how many times you read the book of John, you're going to get something out of it, and how many years you've been a believer. You can move on to even doing a deep dive into the wedding at Cana. Mm-hmm. And looking into Jesus making the water into wine. And you can read the basic story and it'd be simple, but you can also look at it and go, well, hey, this was Jesus's initial miracle mm-hmm. to show who he was and that he was God. And so you've got I went through a Bible study one time that compared the wedding at Cana and turning water into wine to the creation story. Okay. Which mm-hmm. just was, fascinating. You might be able to find some information on it. I don't know, but it starts. You've got the water, right, which is like the earth being void, and then you've got God forming the earth out of His words, and you've got Jesus. When you look at that, He doesn't really do the work. He tells people to do the work. So He does this miracle with His words, and there's all these great comparisons. Anyway, that's what I love about the book of John, is that you can keep it very basic for somebody that's new and that's interested in the Bible, or you can do these incredible deep dives where you can go off and just study one little passage for weeks at a time and really learn a lot. Yeah. So it means a lot to me.
That's awesome. Did the book of John, and I'm sure it did, help you ever in times of hurt or confusion, or just where you needed direction in the law enforcement career?
Sure. Yeah.
Seeing all the things that you saw
so many years ago, probably when I was at a low point in life and, living in a way that I shouldn't have been, making decisions that I shouldn't have made. And there's no excuse for that. But I shortly after that went through a Bible study with a group of guys, and it was the book of John, and it was taught by a guy who had just come out of seminary. So he had a lot of really deep knowledge of the book and a lot of background, and was able to go back and forth. And man, we would go through a Bible study, and he would read 2 verses, and we'd sit there and talk about it for an hour and a half. And it really showed me that I already knew the book of John. I already knew the stories in it. I already knew the things about it. Mm-hmm. But he showed me how to deep dive into that conversation in such a way that you can just open up an incredible world. So yeah, it was great. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah. There's a reason why the book of John is the last book in the gospel.
Yeah. And it's unique, because the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're all similar. They tell similar versions, and John kind of takes a unique perspective and does something different than the synoptics did. But anyway, it just means a lot to me. It's a great book. Yeah.
And John, the author, is not John the Baptist, right?
Me and Brett were talking about that the other day. Yeah.
John,
that was interesting.
No, it was not John the Baptist.
Yeah. John the Apostle, the son of Zebedee, was the author. But he talks about John the Baptist, and that can be very confusing. Very early on in the book.
Right.
Well, it was great having you on. Thank you for your service.
Seriously, man.
Thank you for your years that you have dedicated and are
appreciate it.
Continuing to help. So
and thank you too for I think bringing awareness to a lot of things that aren't talked about enough. Mental health, both from perspective as a police officer to just whoever out there, right?
Yeah.
it's a big discussion that we need to have. So thank you.
It's important for sure.
It is. Yeah.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Cool, man.
Yeah. We'll try to put links in the bio with anything that we could help with, far as that can help with PTSD and things like that on this episode. I think resources would be really good. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, man, if you guys like the show, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Tell your friends about it. And thank you guys for watching. We're going to catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.